Welcome to the Meaningful Signs of the Times program. The Bible speaks of the sons of Issachar, a tribe of Israel, with the commendation that they understood the signs of the times. I'm Pastor Steve from the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Guthrie Center. As our name suggests, we are very interested in the second coming or advent of Jesus. While there are many teachings on the specific signs which can cause fear and concern, our intention is to educate people on the nature of the signs so that they can be prepared for what is happening and will happen in the world prior to the return of Christ. In other words, we want to provide useful applications that can benefit each person's life. Our program today is titled Appreciating the Sacred. In each of our studies, we want to provide biblical support for all that we say. We, as a church, do not want to just offer opinions, but instead we teach what the Bible actually says. And the key for that method is to allow for the Bible to interpret itself. So if you have any questions about what I am teaching or would like a transcript of the message, then email me at pastorsteve@netins.net. I will repeat this address at the conclusion of the message. We do not use the word sacred in our everyday usage. We do refer to religious music as sacred, and perhaps we might reference a sacred service. I decided to explore what the Bible had to say about sacred, and I referred to Webster's 1828 dictionary to seek some definitions. Here's the definition for holy, in which Webster first refers to God and then things related to God. Properly whole, entire, or perfect in a moral sense, hence pure in heart, temper, or dispositions, free from sin and sinful affections. Applied to the Supreme Being, holy signifies a perfectly pure, immaculate, and complete in moral character. Hence, holy is used as nearly synonymous with good, pious, godly. The second definition from Webster is as follows: hallowed, consecrated, or set apart to a sacred use, or to the service or worship of God. A sense frequent in scriptures as the holy Sabbath, holy oil, holy vessels, a holy nation, a holy temple, a holy priesthood. This definition is similar to Webster's definition of sacred. Holy, pertaining to God or to his worship, separated from common secular uses, and consecrated to God and his service, such as a sacred place, a sacred day, a sacred feast, sacred service, sacred orders. The definition for sacred is similar to the definition of the Hebrew word kodesh, which is translated holy and means apartness, holiness, sacredness, separateness. In other words, it implies things or people being set apart or separated for sacred purposes. The idea of being set apart or separated is to distinguish that which is holy from that which is common or profane. Webster defines profane as irreverent to anything sacred. Applied to persons, a person is profane when he takes the name of God in vain or treats sacred things with abuse and irreverence. Not sacred, secular, relating to secular things as profane history. I've spent a lot of time with these definitions, but when we're discussing theological matters, words have meaning, and we need to know the correct meaning of these words. The importance of holiness is found in God's constant interaction with mankind over the years. God chose to use the Israelites, descendants of Abraham, who was a friend of God, to demonstrate to the pagan world what his holiness meant. To accomplish this goal, God created the Hebrew culture with its services and regulations that would cause the nation to be different than the world around them. How could the pagan world see God's holiness if the people were just like them? This is the reason that the people of God are portrayed as a peculiar people, because the ways of God differ greatly from the ways of the world. The word peculiar in the biblical sense means a valued possession and is found in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. While God's intent was for Israel to be a peculiar or holy people, the Israelites constantly preferred to be like the people of the nations around them. They sought a king over them rather than having God rule them, and they persistently went after the idols of the nations around them. They were in their behavior causing the character of God to be blasphemed by the nations. Jesus found a similar situation when he came to the earth. All the nations of the earth except Israel were worshiping pagan gods. Israel was the only nation that had any claim to worshiping God, but they had so distorted the nature of God through their legalism that people lost interest in God. This is why it's so important to maintain a middle-of-the-road manner of life. We don't want to go to the left side ditch and get into justifying sin by liberal theology, nor do we want to go into the right side ditch and get into cold formalism that drains the beauty of God from one's life. We must stay in the middle of the road, which is walking in the righteousness of Christ and his holiness without slipping into license or formality. In other words, people need to see God for who he really is, not some contorted character that some people try to cast God in. What therefore is the true character of God? Here are some of the aspects that speak to the real character of God. God is truthful, God is merciful, God is love, God is holy, God is mighty and all-powerful. God is so much greater than any human, yet people are constantly trying to strip God of his holiness so that they can bring him down to their level. When the proper action is for the people to be holy so they can bring people up closer to God's level. It's important, therefore, that we do not accept the standards of people and thus retreat from being a holy people as defined by the Bible. Such a retreat would not allow people to get a proper view of God. One means by which the specialness or sacredness of God can be diminished is to make everything common or profane so God does not appear to be special. What makes something special? I will again resort to Webster for the answer. Peculiar, particular, noting something more than ordinary. What would make believers more than ordinary? In our world today, people ignore the Ten Commandments, which were intended to make us stand out from the world, which would make their behavior common or profane as based on our earlier definition. So how do we focus on the sacred? We could focus on rituals and formalities, but the most important act of sacredness or holiness is obedience. And the best source for obedience is the Ten Commandments. Jesus tells us in John chapter 14, verse 15, if you love me, keep my commandments. The first 4 commandments relate to God and are found in Exodus chapter 20, verses 2 through 11. I'm going to summarize them. The first commandment is to have no other God but God. Jesus expressed the fulfillment of this commandment in Matthew 22, verse 37. Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. The second commandment is not to have any idols. Idols are anything of this world that will hinder your relationship to God. The third commandment is not to take the name of God in vain. While many people believe this only applies to cursing, the truth is that it covers anything that would cause God to be less sacred and become more common. This would include trivializing the nature of God and making light of his holiness. The fourth commandment is very important because it is where we place God as the sovereign of our life. God rested on the seventh day during the creation week, thus hallowing it, and we are to emulate this practice as it identifies God as our creator. Here is the actual text found in Exodus chapter 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. God is stressing the point that we are not to labor or to pursue vain amusements on this day, for it trivializes the sacredness of God and His holy day. God not only wants us to be honored on His holy day, which is the seventh day of the week, but God intends this rest to benefit us as people. Here are the benefits of obeying God in this matter. Our body has a chance to rest and restore itself, thus promoting physical health. We rest from the stresses of life so we can experience emotional health. We spend the day immersed in the things of God so we have greater spiritual health. In other words, obeying God has healthy consequences. The next way we could show forth the specialness and holiness of God is to honor the 6 remaining commandments, found in Exodus chapter 20, verses 12 through 17. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. Honoring these commandments would be what Jesus said about the second great commandment, and that is to love our neighbor as ourselves. Imagine a world where there was no murder, no thefts, lying and deception, where children showed respect for their parents and people were content with what they had. God imagined a world like that before He created us. It should not surprise us that people would drift from obeying the Ten Commandments. For Paul tells us in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, that there would be a great falling away. Paul goes on to describe the character of the people that would fall away in 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 5. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people turn away. Does this sound like the world today? Actually, this is a sign of the times that would precede the coming of Jesus. We've come full circle in our comparison of the holiness of God and the profane nature of unrepentant humanity. What can we do in this regard? We must do something, because if good people do nothing, then evil will prevail. We can't as individuals change the world, but we can change ourselves. We can get back to pursuing God's holiness and appreciating the sacred. We can set ourselves away from worldly ways and worldly affections. We can devote ourselves to the study of scriptures so that we can prepare our hearts to be with Jesus for all eternity. Let me pray for you. Father, may the people listening appreciate you for your holiness, and may they desire to be holy as you are holy. Being holy is not something we can do on our own, but you can help us. Help us to rid ourselves of worldly affections and to treasure the things of you, especially your precious word. May we be a people that can stand out in the world by showing your love to others. Amen. You may find out more information regarding our church and our beliefs on our website at GuthrieCenterSDA.com, where you can contact me with your questions about the message or your faith walk. You can also reach me at pastorsteve@netins.net and view our Facebook page at Guthrie Center SDA Church. We look forward to being with you next time.